Hey everyone. So it seems like every time the President of the United States opens his mouth these days, we in Canada get busier. Since the last announcement about the $100,000 fee for H1Bs, I think Canada is going to be even more of an attractive option to nearshore and bring your workers to Canada. So today I have Zia Sumar, who's another partner at our firm who works on corporate immigration law cases. And we wanted to go over a few tips with you if you're thinking of opening up a related business in Canada and sending your workers over to Canada. So Zia, maybe let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of ways that a company can send their workers over to Canada.
So, one of the most popular ways that companies use to bring employees to Canada is through a program called Intracompany Transfer. Now, this is the Canadian version of the US L1 visa. And essentially, it's for companies where they have an employee that's worked for them for at least a year, and the position that they've worked in falls under the definition of either senior manager or specialized knowledge, and they're looking to come to Canada to work in that same role. Now, in Canada, there's a new requirement that the company needs to have at least two revenue generating operations in order to be eligible to use the intracompany transfer program. And so, from a practical point of view, what this means is that if you're thinking about using the intracompany program, you want to set up the Canadian entity as early as possible so that when you're ready to do the transfer, when you're ready to apply for the employee's work permit through the ICT program, you already have the Canadian entity set up and it's already a revenue generating entity.
Sometimes the ICT doesn't work. Let's say your worker hasn't really worked for you for at least a year, or they're not specialized to that level or senior manager. What we could look at is there is a special program called the Labor Market Impact Assessment, LMIA, for the global talent stream. So normally for LMIAs in Canada, the employers, they have to advertise and show they can't find a Canadian to do the job. But the global talent stream bypasses that option. Instead, the company has a plan where they offer 3 different labor market benefits to the government, and it's a 2-week processing time, and then we can get the LMIA, and then we're on our way to apply for the work permit. Now, one of the important things about the LMIAs, whether it's the normal one or the global talent stream, is that the government right now, they're very strict on looking at tax documents as to whether or not your company in Canada has enough net revenues or retained earnings from the previous year of your tax filing to support the salary of the foreign workers. So one of the very important things, if you want to hire your worker next year, you're thinking about it, would be to set it up, the entity here in Canada this year, and be able to generate those tax documents.
There's also a myriad of other options for work permits as well. It just depends on the specifics of a situation of a company's establishment here in Canada, whether you have employees already working that have, for example, you've transferred Canadian employees outside, you may be eligible for other programs like the reciprocal employment program. So there's a number of other options that we can also look at as well.
Yeah, one of our favorites is the free trade agreements. Canada has a multitude of free trade agreements with not only the US and Mexico, but also the EU, Australia, Colombia, Peru, Japan, and the list goes on. And nationals of those countries are able to get work permits. We can apply directly without LMIAs, directly for the work permits for them. The processing times in Canada can be a lot shorter than the US, although sometimes, depending on the circumstances, they can take a few months. So if you're thinking about bringing a worker to Canada, the best thing to do is have a call with us as early as possible to discuss this. One of the options that many of the employers I've spoken with are looking at is looking at whether or not they want to start their own company in Canada or own office or subsidiary in Canada, or hire another Canadian company to be the employer of record, the EOR. What are some of your thoughts about this?
So when we're talking about applying through an EOR, the employee then becomes an employee of the EOR. And so essentially, one of the biggest problems is that you now no longer have control over that employee because they're not your employee anymore. They're a direct employee of the EOR. And the second issue that we've come across that comes up quite a bit is that when they become an employee of the EOR, a lot of companies are, when they're thinking about future planning, are hoping to transfer them back using the L1 visa, but are no longer eligible because the employee has become an employee of the EOR instead.
It's not as hard as you might think, or as expensive as you might think, to create a Canadian entity. For the intracompany, our Canadian L1s, it's not even necessary, for example, for you to open up a new company. You could even have just a branch office in Canada. Even if you were to incorporate it, it's just a matter of a day or two to have that done. We're happy to go over all of the options for you. We really hope that you consider Canada, because our doors are open, and we certainly welcome you to come over here. Take care, everyone.